You will not do anything about this, and shame on you, because our Jewish community need looking after, and as Mayor of London you are not doing that.
Let's move on to Assembly Member Hall.
Okay, thank you. Morning, Mr. Mayor. I'm discussing the protests. So on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, and on the day of the horrific terror attack in Manchester, pro-Palestinian protesters gathered along Whitehall and the Cenotaph to chant offensive slogans and clap to them, play loud music and wave offensive signs. Protesters gathered at Liverpool Street Station, screaming chants at passing commuters. Protesters could be heard chanting "from the river to the sea" and describing Israel as a terror state. So on the day of the Manchester terror attack, was that behaviour appropriate?
No, I don't think it was. I think it's important to distinguish between what's lawful and what's considerate, mindful and sensitive. And it's worth just spending time talking to Jewish people. There is one state that has a Jewish majority, and many people have an affinity to that who are of the Jewish faith. And on the day when a place of worship, on the Day of Atonement, has been attacked by a terrorist, you can understand, I hope, why Jewish people are feeling frightened. And let's not go to what the law is. I think you use the word appropriate. That's a good word. I don't think it's appropriate, because people are feeling scared and frightened more so than they have, in the recent past. Okay, so do you think that the behaviour of the protesters in Whitehall and at Liverpool Street is anti-Semitic? Well, you're asking a general question about individuals' behaviour. I think it's insensitive, and I think it's... No, is it anti-Semitic? No, I don't think marching's anti-Semitic. So you don't think screaming "from the river to the sea and calling it a terror state is anti-Semitic? Okay. So the members now extended a question from "is the march anti-Semitic" to now specific phrases of anti-Semitic. Well, the phrase is constantly being used during these hate marches. This is why I'm asking the question. Do you think to scream "from the river to the sea," which they're doing during these hate marches, is appropriate? Do you think it is anti-Semitic? Okay, I don't think it's anti-Semitic, and I think it's all about context. And we had the same conversation, by the way, Chair, a month ago, when the member was arguing that the far right should be allowed to march, and we were having this conversation about Article 10 and freedom of expression. Now, I already said I think it's inappropriate and insensitive on the day of a terrorist attack to have these sorts of marches. Some slogans can be anti-Semitic, but it's all about context. And in certain contexts, yes, those slogans are anti-Semitic. In other contexts, they're not. Well, we will differ on that view. All we ever hear is "from the river to the sea," and we all know what that means, and that is anti-Semitic. You released a statement the day after the protests, and at no point did you criticise the appalling behaviour we saw. You were unequivocal when you were talking about one particular protest last month, claiming that that was far right. Well, so why don't you describe these protests as clearly? Because they're not only plainly wrong, they are anti-Semitic. Look, the difference, I would say, respectfully, between the member and myself is I'm consistent. So the member argues for the right or the far right to protest, but criticises pro-Palestinians. They're not far right. They wave flags like this. That does not make me far right. That makes me very patriotic, actually. So you immediately come down on those, and yet we have had these anti-Semitic comments constantly from these hate marches, and you don't comment on that at all. Last month you said politicians have refused to condemn the rising tide of hatred in this country. So you should be happy to condemn the behaviour we saw at these pro-Palestinian protests. Well, again, we're going to disagree here, because I think Stephen Jackson Lennon is a racist. He's a violent racist, and when he organises a march, it's a far-right march. Isn't it interesting? That is racist. To call people, to say that "from the river to the sea" isn't, of course, no, because perhaps that's coming from a side that should be allowed to say that. To say "terror state," perhaps that's allowed as well. It's amazing, isn't it? And yet merely flying a flag, immediately it's far right. I mean, do you actually understand why the Jewish community feels unable to do, as you say, live, work and worship freely without fear of harassment, discrimination, intimidation or violence, when they see the duplicity of your remarks when discussing protests on different sides? Do you not understand why they are so concerned about this? I've never mentioned flags. I know she's obsessed by flags. I've never mentioned flags. I'm quite clear in relation to what rights were allowed in terms of freedom of expression, freedom of speech, the right to protest, the cornerstone of our democracy. Even when you disagree with what people are protesting about, I will fight to the death the right to protest and the right to march and so forth. Even the right of Stephen Yaxley Lennon, a racist, to march. He's allowed to do so.
Mr. Mayor, look, you are the mayor of this wonderful city. Does it not worry you that there is one community that has to lock its children in schools for their safety? There is one community that can't come into London because of their listening to chants like "From the River to the Sea," where they're looking at Palestinian flags and hostility towards them. Do you not see that in London, to have one community that is so badly disadvantaged by what is going on with these anti-Semitic chants, that you, as mayor of this great city, should do something about that?
I couldn't be clear in my remarks in relation to my concern about the fear, the increased fear Jewish Londoners and Jewish people across the globe are feeling after the events of last Thursday. I've gone out of my way since October the 7th, 2023, to reassure Jewish Londoners and Jewish people across the country and across the...
But they don't feel reassured. How can they feel reassured?
Member,
But
there's a number of interruptions now that you're making. I understand the point
mainly
you tried
because
to get across.
he's not listening, Chair.
But
He's
he might
not
not be
listening
but
and
you
he's
can't-
not understanding.
But you can't keep interrupting. You have to allow him to answer in the way that he does, and then you can come back again. No one will object to that.
I tell you what,
Yeah.
I'll finish here because you will not do anything about this, and shame on you, because our Jewish community need looking after, and as Mayor of London, you are not doing that. My time is up, Chairman. Thank you.
Tensions flared at City Hall as Conservative London Assembly member Susan Hall launched a fierce attack on Mayor Sadiq Khan, accusing him of failing to protect London's Jewish community amid a surge of anti-Israel protests. The exchange, which has since ignited debate across the capital, underscored the deep divisions over how London's leaders are responding to rising fears of anti-Semitism in the city. The confrontation unfolded during a heated London Assembly session, where Hall condemned Khan for what she called his inaction and lack of moral clarity in the face of provocative pro-Palestinian demonstrations. "Shame on you," she declared, "because our Jewish community need looking after, and as Mayor of London, you are not doing that." Pressed by Hall on whether the protesters' behavior was anti-Semitic, Khan hesitated. He called the actions inappropriate and insensitive, especially given the timing of the attack, but stopped short of labeling them anti-Semitic. When Hall pushed further, asking directly whether chants of "From the River to the Sea" were anti-Semitic, Khan again resisted a definitive answer. "I don't think it's anti-Semitic," he replied, "though in certain contexts, yes, it can be." Her challenge speaks to a wider political fault line. Where does freedom of speech end and hate speech begin? For critics of the mayor, his reluctance to condemn such rhetoric outright reflects a pattern of equivocation that leaves minority communities feeling unprotected. The exchange has reignited long-simmering tensions in London's civic life. Jewish groups have expressed growing unease over the tone of recent demonstrations, while pro-Palestinian activists accuse City Hall of double standards in policing. For Susan Hall, this confrontation was more than political theatre. It was a defining moment in her campaign to position herself as the voice of those who feel ignored by the capital's leadership. For Sadiq Khan, it was a reminder that his cautious approach to protest and free expression will continue to draw fire from both sides of a deeply fractured debate.